is absolutely full of musical
memorabilia.
memories, isn't it? So this is the bedroom of the bedroom tapes. Right?
This is the bedroom of the bedroom tapes is in here.
Mm-hmm. That's Sally's old bedroom.
This is Sally's old bedroom.
Now your studio.
Got my keyboard and some drums and some shakers and...
Yeah.
This room is Ben's old room.
Do you tend to go in there to actually write? I mean, is that where you'd start?
Never.
No?
Except I wrote for 4 years for Walt Disney and Company.
Mm.
And I wrote 2 of the Winnie the Pooh albums, the soundtracks. I did Piglet's Big Movie and the Heffalump movie.
And I'm just noticing that there's a CD on the side by the hi-fi here called Follow You Down. Is that the Dylan song?
This is the one I was telling you about before.
Okay. This is from your very early days in New York.
Yes, that fortunately somebody found in their attic and found a friend of mine and called them and asked whether they thought I would like them, and they gave them to me, and another friend of mine mixed it. You can hardly hear anything of it because it wasn't very well recorded.
But there's a bunch of very later well-known musicians on this, aren't there?
Yeah, it's basically the band, and Al Cooper and Mike Bloomfield, and I can't tell who it is singing. It's either Levon Helm or it might be Richie Havens. That's the other person I was thinking. Or it might be Richard Manuel or Rick Danko.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah. But this was from the time when you knew Albert Grossman, right?
Yes.
Who was managing Dylan.
Right, and when he was trying to make me into a female Dylan.
Yeah. So the year is, what,
66. Yeah.
Okay.
Very good memory.
Let's have a quick listen. That's what it would have sounded like if Carly Simon had joined the band.
Yeah, that would have been
great.
fun.
It's really good.
Isn't that fun?
Never came out, though. Never came out.
Well, no, it just got mixed just a couple of months ago.
That's like a real basement tape.
That is a real basement tape.
Yeah. There's a little sort of element of your future singing style in there, I think. You know, I could have a chance of recognising you.
I guess I was starting to be me.
Yeah. So where we are now, actually, we should just point out that we've got the, is that the Grammy?
Oh, that's my Oscar,
It's your Oscar. Just tell me about that.
It is. That's an Academy, that's just an old Academy Award I have lying around.
This old thing?
It's actually an imitation.
So that's the one for the track from Working Girl.
For Let the River Run, yeah.
Which won an Oscar and a Grammy?
And a Golden Globe.
Golden Globe.
It did indeed, and I do not in any way want to be blasé about it, because it was a very important thing.
Absolutely.
That happened to me.
Talking about the tour, I'm curious to know how many of your classic songs you've been doing and sort of in what form you've been addressing them, because obviously that's a challenge, you know, to think of such an amazing and huge back catalogue as yours and how you do it justice.
We had to drop so many of the songs that I really wanted to do, but when I wrote down my wish list, it was a 7.5-hour show.
Value for money.
That's right. So we've turned it into about a 2+ hour show. I was very worried that I wouldn't be able to get through the tour because of my voice being such a delicate little instrument. I have had a little bit of trouble with it. We have done a bunch of, the better known songs that I have recorded and done slightly different variations on them. Here and there, a different instrument takes a solo, or there's a different backup part, or I sing it slightly differently. And I've wanted to pull some songs from my back catalog.
Give me an example of one of the really well-known ones that you've done on the tour.
Haven't Got Time for the Pain was one I wasn't expecting to do. And then Richard Perry called me up and said, "You've got to do Haven't Got Time for the Pain."
Haven't Got Time for the Pain is a very interesting song because that's one of your early collaborations with Jacob Brackman.
Correct.
Who you've worked with a lot as a lyricist, haven't you, from then till now, really?
I didn't work with him for 12 or 15 years. We just actually started working on a new song. That is the first one in a long time. There was a wonderful song on an album called Have You Seen Me Lately, which Jacob wrote a great lyric about getting out of a rehab. It's just a beautiful song called Waiting at the Gate.
Does it change everything working with a lyricist as opposed to doing the whole thing yourself?
Jacob is the only lyricist I've ever worked with. 95% of the time I write my own lyrics, but when I work with Jake, I get a slightly different take on myself because he identifies so much with me in a lot of different ways, and he sort of puts himself into my voice. And that's the way we wrote, that's the way I've always heard it should be. Because I'd had that song in my head for a long time. I'd had that melody, da 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 da, and I'd written that for a television special called Who Killed Lake Erie, which was about the environment and about how we Americans were destroying our Great Lakes. And so I'd written that. It had already been in the TV kind of docudrama. Once I'd written the melody, I couldn't write a lyric to it because I can't do that. Once I've written a melody, I don't know how to write a lyric to it. It just doesn't come naturally to me. I can strain, but it never sounds natural. So I had just met Jake at around that time, and I said, how do you feel about giving this melody just a go and see what happens? And he came up with what is now, that's the way I've always heard it should be, the lyric, as in my father sits at night with no lights on. That really sets the stage for, what's this song going to be about? It's a kind of a perfect song in a way because it keeps you wondering what the song is going to be about. And a lot of people still don't quite understand what it's exactly about.
It's widely misunderstood, isn't it?
Yes, people think that it's a pro-marriage song, when in fact it's quite a cynical view of marriage.
Does that bother you that people get it wrong sometimes?
No, it's just, I understand. I understand why it wouldn't be that oblique to get it wrong, because if you give it a simple listen to, it seems to be, but you say it's time we move in together and raise a family of our own, you and me. Well, that's the way I've always heard it should be. You want to marry me. That sounds gung-ho. And the drums are big and the vocal is tripled and it's a very upbeat sound. And on tour, Benjamin sings, that's the way I've always heard it should be.
Really?
Yes.
Your son?
Yes.
Who is a great singer in his own right and has his own new record out, which I'm going to ask you about a little bit later on. From that same period, as that's the way I've always heard it should be, I'm thinking about a song called Anticipation.
Yes, we did that one as well. That's a song that I usually opened my shows with, all 12 shows that I've ever done in my life. This time I didn't quite open with it. I let a couple songs pass first. And of course, Sally and Ben, my two children, opened the entire concert and did their own songs for a bunch of minutes, and then Ben sang That's the Way I've Always Heard It Should Be, and then a little bit later, Anticipation.
Anticipation is a song you wrote about, actually specifically anticipating something, didn't you?
Yes, I was waiting for Cat Stevens to pick me up on our first real date. We'd hung out together a lot backstage because I was opening the shows for him during the spring of 1971. We started dating, so I was waiting for him to pick me up, and at 8 o'clock he did not show up. And so I was just a little bit too nervous. I'd already sort of tried to imitate him as a musician and imitate his vocal style and his guitar style, which nobody can really do either, but I was just trying. And so I sat on the bed in my bedroom, interestingly enough. I was far away enough from the door so that if he was hanging out outside the door listening, he wouldn't have been able to hear me. But I decided, I better just do something that will absorb all of this energy so that I won't be able to think about how excited I am about his actually coming to my door. So I sat down and I wrote the song, and I finished it before he arrived at 8:20.
That's admirable use of time, I must say. What are you waiting for a boyfriend to write a hit song in the meantime?
Well, sometimes that shot of adrenaline will just make you work at the speed of sound. It'll just rev you up. It'll make your adrenaline just pump through your system until you've got a song called Anticipation.
Play us a little bit of it.
If I'm
A very happy Christmas from me, Paul Sexton. It's the second hour of our Sold On Song special, At Home with CARLY Simon. It's BBC Radio 2, our Sold On Song special with CARLY Simon, and that's always going to be a signature song of yours, isn't it?
Seems to be going that way. I mean, everybody thinks that the statute of limitations has run out on my being the only one to know who it's about.
I'm going to be tactful and not ask you that for once, I think.
How nice of you.
But just to say that Mick Jagger...
Just when I was going to tell you.
I know, yeah, I don't want to know. Just I'm bored. But we should say that's Mick Jagger on backing vocals.
It is Mick Jagger.
Uncredited.
For sure.
On the album.
Uncredited, as, yes, he preferred it that way. He preferred it that it would be a mystery. Ha!
Yeah, right. Did you know him at that point? Had you met before? Or what was
we
the
met very
circumstances?
close to that time. We met maybe 2 months before then. And it just so happened that he was calling me at the studio about a get-together. I was recording backups to You're So Vain with Harry Nilsson. And so I said, why don't you come to the studio? Because Harry and I are putting these backup vocals on this song of mine called Ballad of a Vain Man. He said, okay, and he came by, and the three of us started to record the harmonies, and then Harry had to go and meet John Lennon or somebody, or he actually said, you know, the two of you have such good vocal chemistry that this would be probably a good time for me to slip away.
Polite man.
Yes, very, very, very wonderful man, Harry Nilsson.
Having said what I just said about the lyrical thing, I mean, you've had fun with it over the years, haven't you? I mean, I'm sure it's sort of played out now, but the whole thing about the mystery is endlessly fascinating to people, I think, isn't it?
I just got a letter from an 11-year-old boy from a Catholic school in Maryland saying, I'm really going to die unless I find out who this song is about. I've been hearing it since I was born, and my mother was always wondering who it was about, and I just don't think I can live anymore unless you tell me.
No emotional blackmail there, then?
No, but I think it may have been his mother who put him up to it. I don't know. I wrote back to him, I actually did. I just sent it off yesterday, just saying that he shouldn't worry himself with things like that, and that he should play basketball and football and baseball, which he said were his favorite pastimes. Everybody has this nagging impulse to try to get a secret out of somebody else. I mean, don't you find that that's true?
Yeah, it's like a challenge, isn't it? But talking about Mick leads us to talk about the Stones a little bit. And you were very gracious to give us a little comment for the special that we did on the Stones on Radio 2 in the summer. And then you were at the show in Boston as I was.
It was so fabulous. I could have sat through 3 more hours of it. I would have loved them to have done Wild Horses or any of the ballads.
Just to finish talking about the Stones, did you find that they and that first wave of British rock and roll that came over here was a big influence on you in the way that Elvis had been?
Definitely, the first wave of English rock and roll. I was actually over in Britain in 1965. That was sort of at the height of the beginning of it. And I sang on a show with Herman's Hermits and Peter and Gordon. Of course, later Peter Asher, who was to become James's manager and a good friend of mine. And there were so many groups sprouting out of Britain at that time. I was aware of just about all of them. And the Stones were, of course, the major naughty boys. I was very attracted to that. Equally attracted to the Stones and the Beatles and listened to them all. But there were other groups too that I adored. And then 5 years later, there were all kinds of individual singers, either who came from groups or who sprouted up on their own, like Cat Stevens.
Do you remember that little thing you wrote about the Stones on that song called The Reason? Or it was a little bit of a song, wasn't it, called
Oh, yes.
The Reason?
What about a holiday? Just the 8 of us. You and me and all the Stones. Wouldn't want to leave them out. Couldn't find a nicer bunch. Yeah, something about crossing the boulevard. Yeah, those sweet
right, yeah.
Rolling Stones.
They really were an influence, weren't they?
Oh, yeah. Well, they were and are and will be.
Let's go back and talk some more about the new Moonlight Serenade album. And maybe get you to choose another favourite track.
I love The More I See You. There's something that's just so timely about that. It's a song of its time. It's extremely evocative, just emotionally resonant for me.